being here. And my music's still on. Let me stop my music. I thought it was going to continue. Got it. There you go. So we are going to be talking about Microsoft Copilot in the age of intelligent instructional design. Now, yes, that is a long title, but I do want to emphasize that intelligent instructional design is something that you've been doing for quite some time with the support of your administration at the central office level, your coordinators, your content curriculum experts there at the school district. So you've been doing some intelligent instructional design. I know throughout the summers they work on curriculum writing, and PSJA has been at the forefront of being innovative and integrating instructional technologies, instructional practices that blend in perfectly with the technology into the scope and sequence or pacing guide, whatever you call it, right? But it is something that we've seen PSJA do for years. And now this year, we've seen other school districts also work with us and work with the technology department to bring in those instructional practices in technology integration into the curriculum to be embedded in the curriculum. So we are grateful. We appreciate PSGA taking lead on that and being a model for other school districts in the region 1 area around, all across the valley. And this is perfect because this year, as you may all be aware, we do have the new tech apps TEKs that are being integrated into the curriculum a lot more in elementary that they've been in previous years. Also, with the new changes to the science TEKs, it's important that we understand the engineering design process and how a lot of this ties in perfectly with what we talk about when we talk about AI and instructional design and how this helps us facilitate. So you might see some of the content that I've been working and my presentation has been evolving throughout the past year or so because of how much AI has impacted the way we teach, the way we learn. And I'm not here to tell you, and we don't want to obviously do this. As far as AI for students, we are still working. We're in the phase where AI has been for teacher use, and that's what we are going to be talking about. Feli is also talking about Copilot, and how she's been using Copilot, for a lot of the language instruction and just overall teaching. We have ideas that have helped evolve into the design part of a learning experience. So that's what we are going to be talking about. So our objectives for today is to explore the use of Microsoft Copilot as an intelligent assistant to design a learning experience that integrates the understanding by design, or the UBD framework, and some of Marzano's high yield strategies. Some people say Marzano's been around for ages. And you're right, Marzano's been around for ages. But also what John Dewey was saying 100 years ago about how students learn still applies today. That the experiential learning, being hands-on with what they're doing in a social setting, all of that still applies because that's how students learn, right? So even though, yes, Marzano strategies came out decades ago, if we look at it now and we integrate the technology, it applies perfectly to what we are doing in the classroom. And again, this is going to complement what you already do. What we as educators are doing is not to replace, is not to change, is to help you a little better, help you in a way that maybe allows you to do other things that otherwise would be more challenging. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Omar Lopez. I'm currently an instructional technology specialist here at Region 1. I've been here over 3 years now. Prior to this, I taught middle school. I was a 7th grade ELA teacher. And then when the opportunity came, I jumped over to be an 8th grade science teacher. I was a middle school teacher for 18 years. I like to say, and you probably heard me say this before, I'm a recovering middle school teacher, and I loved middle school. I love what I do now because I get to work with teachers, but I also participated in student camps. So Region 1 does some student camps where we go do robotics, STEM, instructional technology. So a lot of what teachers are learning in Canva and Google Slides, we also teach that to students, and it's a lots of fun. So that's my name. If you are on Twitter, you can find me at Omar Lopez 0207. I share some content on instructional technology. It's all professional. That's what I use social media for. It's to connect with other educators and learn from them. The more we know, the better we can help our students. So very quickly here, if you can scan this, this is just a way for me to understand a little bit more about what's going on with usage of Copilot. You can scan it. Let me see if I can. Well, it's going to play here. Let me check this one out. Copy link. Let me see if I can add the link. No. Let me add it. Add the link here. Hold on. And I'm going to add it to the chat. It's not very extensive. I think it's like 3 questions. If you can answer that, that'll be perfect. I would appreciate that greatly. We have one response so far. And I'll add it here again. Well, the link is in the chat, but I'll add the QR code just in case you need it. There's a QR code again. Now, part of what we do as teachers, right? Some part of the design is for us to understand our audience, understand our learners, and see where they're at. Right now, I'm talking to you all as, okay, what's your proficiency level? So, are you all very knowledgeable in Copilot? Maybe I need to skip a few steps because you already know that. Maybe you are not. So, I got 3 responses. I got some folks feeling uncomfortable by AI. I got one of them feeling comfortable. Okay, good. AI is extremely helpful. So I love that. So we got one person in the audience who's been using Copilot and find it helpful. Somebody says it is not helpful at all. And hopefully this will change some minds. Slightly confident, confident, extremely confident. So we got some results. I'm going to go ahead and refresh here and see if we could get a little more. Um, uh, Okay, so that's good if this is the first time if you're a co-pilot. So I find that I'm in between, and that's exactly what happens in the classroom, right? We got some of our students that I can let them go, and in fact, I can give them next week's lesson plan and the TEKS and the standards, and they can go and learn on their own. But then I got some students that I got to build that background because they didn't pick it up in 4th grade, and now they're in 5th grade. I got to make sure that they understand the basics of what I'm going to be talking about. So if I'm talking about layers of the earth, then I got to build a foundation. And that's important. That's what happens in the classroom. So I'm going to try my best to meet the needs of all my learners in here. And if you have any questions, please stop me at any time. Now, what we like to also talk about is that PSJA is a wonderful partner, and Region 1 are together. So if there's a need for us to, let's say, hey, Omar, can you meet on Wednesday afternoon for 30 minutes during a faculty meeting? I'll be glad to do that. So we work really well. You can reach out to me. I'll share my email in a moment, and we can meet during conference or share webinars or do something because that's what we like to do here and support. our school districts. So again, we got some folks feeling uncomfortable. We got a couple of neutral, very uncomfortable, and one that's super comfortable. So find out who the person is and reach out to them and let them know, hey, can you answer some questions? But let's move on to our next topic, and we'll dive into um, Microsoft Copilot. I have an example here, empowering students with Wakelet. We're not gonna get there, to be honest with you. This is typically like a half day session, so we're not gonna do that. I have it on there just in case we get there, we'll do it. But if not, we're going to spend most of our time in Microsoft Copilot because I feel that it is powerful. Now, it's important to talk a little bit about instructional technology. And instructional technology is not just the piece of tech, it's just not the phone, not your iPad, but it's the whole approach to teaching and learning, right? So, how can we enhance our teaching and transform the learning by providing educators like you and me with innovative ways to, one, engage our students, promote active learning. We cannot be sitting down like I'm sitting down here, right? But we need to have our students moving around as much as we can. We should be personalizing instruction, and we're not designing a lesson plan for each child. That would be unrealistic, right? But we want to personalize and maybe have our lesson include a piece of moving, include a piece in my lesson, in my unit, of drawing, include a section where students uh, write a poem or create a video. It doesn't mean that everybody else writes an essay and Omar, who can actually sit still for too long, he gets to create a video. No, it just means that in this intelligent design of my lesson, I'm going to use this instructional technology to have an interactive piece, to have a downtime piece, to have a drawing, creating, using infographics, creating a video, speaking in front of class. I had a student that was, he had difficulty writing. He had a disability and he could not write very well, but he could speak very well. So oftentimes he would record a video on his iPad. What he was trying to write, he would squiggle or make his lines there, and then he would narrate in the iPad. And to me, that was very powerful because I was still able to see that he understood what I was talking about. So that's what we're are one of the ways that we want to include everybody. So effective lesson design is critical because it allows us to, as I said earlier, create engaging and meaningful experiences for all your students. And I like to use the UBD. Some of you may have heard of the backwards design model, right? Or understanding by design by McDye and Wiggins that talk about and say we need to first of all identify the desired results. What should the students be able to do, or what should the students know by the end of the week, by Friday, or maybe by next Friday if I have a longer unit? I know social, and I know a little bit of the social studies TEKs. I don't know what they are, right? But I know that they have tons of TEKs that they need to cover throughout the week. It's just so much. Eighth grade science, the same thing. So I'm not familiar with the math and science TEKs, so I don't know how the pacing guys goes. But I know that there's a lot in the TEKs that they have to know. So sometimes they need to know by Wednesday so that on Friday they need to know something else. Some of these may extend a little longer, but the idea is that we understand clearly what is going to be what students need to be able to do and tell me at the end of the week. And that takes us to our next step, which is the determining acceptable evidence. What does that mean, Omar? Well, what is evidence that shows that my student learned what we are learning this week? Whether it was to differentiate between chemical reactions and physical reactions, or be able to observe and identify the implications of something that happened in history, or being able to calculate uh, volume of irregular prisms, or I don't know, is it misshaped prisms, irregular prisms, whatever, but not your common prisms. How do they need to know that, right? What is it that they need to show, or what can they create to show that they learned it? And the last thing we worry about is the learning experiences in our instruction, whether it is a Google Slides or a Canva presentation or a Nearpod or an Ed Puzzle or a Padlet or a Wakelet. That's the last thing we worry about. We must never, and this is just a recommendation, right? Must is probably too strong of a word, but we should never start a lesson with, okay, I have an iPad and I saw this new app online. What can I teach with this iPad? Or what can I teach with this application? Or I saw a cool website. How can I use it? That's the last thing you worry about. First, you look at what you need to know, then you think about your applications. And this takes us to the next thought, right? Of bringing in that technology and the pedagogy to transform our instruction through this intelligent design that we are talking about. In this case, this tech that we're talking about is going to be Microsoft Copilot, is the tech that we are going to be talking about bringing in our pedagogy. Since we're talking about pedagogy, uh, we use or we follow the TPAC framework. And TPAC stands for T for technology, P for pedagogy or pedagogical. Uh, CK is content knowledge. So pedagogical knowledge, technological knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and content knowledge. So we have these three here, these three areas that we have so that we can do effective technology integration. We have the content knowledge. You, as a content area teacher, a second grade teacher, you know what your students need to know before they move on to third grade and have to take the START test. You, as an eighth grade science teacher, you know what your students need before they move on to ninth grade biology and they have to take that EOC course or that EOC test. Um, as a content teacher or as a grade level teacher, you know what content, you know your TEKs, you know your standards, you know what your students need to know before they leave your classroom at the end of May and at the end of the school year. In the pedagogical content or pedagogical knowledge is you understand that if you have a student like Omar, you could definitely not have Omar reading a very long paragraph because he might get distracted and he's just going to start doodling and drawing. You know that Omar works well when he is in a group. So maybe you design some group activities so that you can target Omar's needs. Maybe you know that Omar just came from Mexico and he doesn't have the language. So you need to provide some sort of sentence frames or illustrations or some sort of visual so that Omar can participate and be successful in the lesson. That's your pedagogical knowledge. Content, you know your TEKs, you need to know, you know what they need to learn, whether it's related to the ELA, science, math, social studies, or whatever elective it is that you're teaching, whether it's music, physical ed, health, whatever. Pedagogical is how you design your lesson so students learn best and you can maximize their effort in learning the content that you are an expert of. And the last piece is this technological knowledge. Understanding what the technology can do for you is very powerful as you build, as you design these lessons, right? Intelligent design of a lesson is what technology you have available. So you understand, okay, you know what, PSJA, we pay, or PSJA, we have access to this, and this. As a free user, I have access to Canva. I have access to Adobe Express. I have Edpuzzle or I have Nearpod. We pay for Pear Deck. We have Gami. We have iExcel. We have whatever application we have available or you have available, then that's how you leverage that technology. You know that Adobe Express is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal application. It's free, and every tool out there is accessible to students. Students can create videos. Students can create presentations. Students can create social media posts. Students can create infographics. Students can create audio animations. That's awesome. So if my students need to know something or be able to describe or be able to visualize or identify, then I can use this application. What's going to tell me what app I can use? My TEKS. The cognitive verbs in the TEKS is what dictates what product you can use as acceptable evidence. So let's move on. As I mentioned, personalizing instruction is going to be very challenging to create 50 different lesson plans because you have 36 different students and maybe one plan doesn't work for that child. But what you are doing is you're using this intelligent design to create material, to create activities that maximize understanding and help students progress through the content that they are learning. Now, that was, let's see here, Google Gemini. We're going to work with Microsoft Copilot. So I am going to jump into Copilot now. And the website is copilot.microsoft.com. And again, please stop me if you have any questions. I'm going to sign in with my regular Region 1 account. You all have, many of you use Teams, so you use that account. There's a couple of things here. I want to highlight this before anything. The Microsoft Copilot that I'm talking about is the one that's free. You're not going to have this one that says work and web. I only have the free one. I'm sorry, I'm going to be talking about the free one. You see that it's got this green dot over here on the right side. That means my data is protected. So that's a good thing. And I am going to look at the chat to see if you need more time to log into Microsoft Copilot. So open up another tab, move your Teams window to the side or do something, but log into open Copilot and give me a thumbs up, please, on the chat, if you don't mind, to tell me that you are in. Awesome. Thank you, Veronica. And Berenice, thank you. I wonder if my camera is going to accept my thumbs up. It does not. Oh, I wanted to. Sometimes my camera does. Oh, there's a thumbs up. Barely came up. Signed in. Awesome. So again, yes, sign in with your PSJA account. I started using Microsoft Copilot before we had it here in Region 1. I started using it with my personal Gmail. Same thing, except my data wasn't protected. Now that I sign in with my Region 1 account, my data is protected. So now, now I can use Copilot to ask Copilot to help me come up with activities. Anybody teach fifth grade here? Or if you can tell me just in the chat what grade levels you teach, that would be perfect. Sixth. So Miss Amelia in sixth grade special ed. Oh my goodness, we're going to talk about that, Berenice, in just a moment. I'm sorry, I call you Berenice. I should have said Miss Cardenas. I apologize. Third grade. Oh, that's a tough grade. But let's look at sixth grade for Ms. Garcia. So please help me. I'm going to try to zoom in here just a little bit so that you can see what I'm typing. Please help me design some engaging activities for my sixth grade students who are learning about the layers of the earth. Uh, some of my students are emergent bilinguals and need content and language supports. Please include that in this response. Also, okay, I'm gonna leave it there. So here's my question. Please help me design some engaging activities for my sixth grade students who are learning, and I misspelled learning. I do this all the time. About the layers of the earth. Some of my students are emerging bilinguals and need content language support. Please include that in this response. So now Copilot is coming up with some advice, some activities that say, oh, layer earth flipbook, interactive layer cake model. Like, well, I don't know, we want to, although as much as I would love to see a cake model of the layers of the earth, it might be a little challenging. So I'll skip on that. I'm not even going to read through that. But I like this one, layer earth flipbook. Students create a flipbook that illustrates and describes each layer of the earth. What are neat paper, markers, colored pencils, and staplers. Each page of the flipbook represents a different layer. Students draw and write a few facts about each layer. Language support provides sentence starters and word banks, allows students to write in their home language and English. I think PSJA has been, like I mentioned earlier, at the forefront of dual language. PSJA has been recognized for the work that they do with bilingual students in the dual language models. So this is probably something that you're already doing. But check this out. I'm going to focus on number two. I like number two. I like idea number two. Can you elaborate more on that? So now it's explaining what Copilot meant for idea number two. And it was students will create a flipbook to illustrate and describe the different layers of the earth, reinforcing their understanding through visual and written content. Here are my materials. Intro. Begin with a brief discussion about the layers, Earth's layers, crust, mantle, and core, inner core. Show a diagram of Earth's layers and explain each one. Creating the flipbook. Step one. Step two. Step three. Illustrating the layers. Students can title the flipbook Layers of the Earth and decorate the cover. Draw and color Earth's crust. Now, that's all good. Language support, provide key cards with terms, crust, mantle, outer core, inner core, and their translations. Offer sentence starters like the crust is, the mantle is, create word banks, review and share. And here's some additional tips. Visual aids, use diagrams to picture to support understanding. Now, this is awesome. Well, I think, but I want to add a technology piece. Okay. What I have a set of Chromebooks in my classroom. How can my students use these to create a product that we can share with share on Parents Night? Now it's telling me, oh, cool, you have that. Let's create a digital flipbook on Google Slides or Book Creator. Students can create digital versions of Layer Earth flipbook using Google Slides Book Creator. So now maybe we did need it at one point to be on paper, but we're taking it a step further by creating a digital flip book, interactive presentations in Google Slides or Prezi, Canva or Google Drawings, Kahoot quizzes, collaborative research, Google Docs, and Google Sites. So now look at what Copilot is doing for us. It's telling us, hey, you're going to share this, publish your students' work, ask them to create a Google site. So now this Google site that your students are creating, even your emergent bilinguals who might struggle with the language are contributing to this Google site. Now they're becoming content creators. So they've gone from consumers of information. Now they're taking that information, processing it, and adding it to a Google site so they can share with others. And they can use it to review uh, for an upcoming test or something. Language support for emerging bilinguals, use translation tools, bilingual resources, visual aids, encourage the use of images, peer collaboration. I believe that what we are getting here is powerful. Now, I taught eighth grade science for 10 years. So I like to say that I was very good at having and coming up with activities for my students. We didn't have Copilot when I was teaching, so if not, I would have been using it a lot. Um, I love your question, Ms. Amelia Garcia. I'm gonna try that in just a minute. If you give me some time, it's like you're reading my mind or my website here, my Canva. I'm gonna come to that in just a moment. But I want to show you this. Understanding is revealed when students autonomously make sense and transfer their learning through authentic performance. This is by McTighe and Wiggins from the book Understanding by Design. And this is the backwards design model, right? So when they create something that's authentic to them and relevant to them, you'll see how their understanding comes through a lot more, it has more impact. And that's where we go into the creativity piece. We're not going to jump into Adobe Express just yet. I will show you a little bit that I think it's phenomenal, but we're not going to jump into it because I want to go into, and I went a little too far. Student expectation. This is a fifth grade standard, 5.12a. Observe and describe how a variety of organisms survive by interacting with biotic and abiotic factors in a healthy ecosystem. So if you remember, the first step was to identify the desired results. And I bolded observe and describe because those are my cognitive verbs. This is what students need to be able to know and do at the end of my unit. They need to be able to observe and then describe how organisms interact in an ecosystem. Simply put, that's your content objective, right? Describe, well, how can they describe? That might be your language objective, right? Where they verbalize it, they create a video, or they write it down in the description. That's your ELPs. That's something, we're not covering that, but you know your ELPs. And this is what students are doing. Now, once we identify this, that they need to observe and describe, okay, what's some acceptable evidence? Oh, a Canva video. So my students need to create a video in Canva showing me how organisms interact in an ecosystem, or describing, better yet, for a better word, how organisms interact. Or maybe I just want them to create an infographic on Adobe Express with some arrows, some wording, and showing how these organisms interact, whether it's a predator prey or parasite host, how are they interacting in an ecosystem. And how am I going to teach this? What is my learning experience? Well, I'm going to give my students an Ed Puzzle video. I know Ed Puzzle you pay for. I have the free account where I get to my 10 videos. I think it's 10 or 20 videos. And then I cannot use it anymore. That's fine. I'll just delete one. I can always get it later. So I can have my videos like that. So I never paid for any subscriptions, but you have that available. If your district pays for Nearpod, then use Nearpod. If your district pays for Pear Dig, then use Pear Dig. If you don't have any of those because this doesn't pay for it, no pasa nada. Because a lot of these applications, their free version is enough to for what we needed. We can recycle all the time, so it's perfectly okay. Now, we want to extend the learning or provide additional support. We can create a weekly collection with visual aids, with a word bank, with sentence starters, with translated material. We can do that. That's part of our intelligent lesson design, using all these technologies so that we can create a design. I'm sorry, we can design a lesson, a learning experience that is memorable, that is applicable, that's relevant, and that's engaging for your students. So I know, Ms. Amelia, you mentioned, hey, let's put a TEKS. Would it know what the TEKS are? Yes and no. And I'm going to tell you why. I Googled, or not Googled, I'm sorry. I put it to Copilot, create a lesson for eighth grade science 8.5A. 8.5A is atomic structure. Well, the lesson that it created and was great was about the periodic table. The periodic table is 8.5C. And that's where your content knowledge comes into play. If you just put the TEKS, it might not give you what the TEKS are. And remember, TEKS just changed for eighth grade or for science. The TEKS were updated. The TEKS are going to change for math because because these models are fed information, they might not be up to date. But what I am going to do here is I am going to take this and I'm going to copy this whole thing. Copy. I'm going to come back to Copilot and I'm going to start a new chat just by clicking here where it says new topic. Oh, I'm going to say, hello, Copilot. How are you today? So I'm here and ready to help you with whatever you need. How can I assist you today? Happy face. I like to say hello, Copilot. Hi, how are you? Because just in case robots do take over one day, they're gonna remember. Oh, ese Omar, he was a nice guy. He always greeted us. So I'm just adding that piece. You don't have to though, but just remember that. So, hello. I need help designing activities that integrate Marzano's high yield strategies with the following TEKS. Hello, I need help designing activities that integrate Marzano's high-yield strategies with the following TEKS. 5.12a, observe and describe. Notice how I didn't put only 5.12a. I added the whole description so that Copilot knows what I'm talking about. Many of my students have learning disabilities and need additional support in the learning process. I want to follow the 5E learning model. Please help me. And that's my quote or my prompt. Notice what it's giving me. It's a little fast, but I'll come back to it. Engage, capture students' interest and assess prior knowledge. Show a short, engaging video about ecosystems and interactions between biotic and abiotic factors. Marzano strategies. Cues, questions, and advanced organizers. Use a KWL chart to activate prior knowledge and set learning goals. Simple, right? We've been doing that for years. Now I'm using this and I'm like, okay, this is good confirmation for me as an educator that if Copilot's recommending something that I've been using for years, so I'm on the right track, right? Now, for a brand new teacher, maybe this Copilot can prompt ideas of how to expand on this teaching model. Explore, allow students to investigate and gather information. Set up stations with different ecosystem models, pond, forest, desert. Provide hands-on materials like soil, water, plants, and small plastic animals. Marzano strategy, non-linguistic representations. Encourage students to create diagrams or models of the ecosystems they explore. Okay, perfect. Diagrams or models, I can create that in Canva. I can create that in Adobe Express. I like that. Facilitate class discussion where students share their findings. Maybe I want to use that board option in Nearpod. Do y'all have Nearpod, by the way? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's okay. Some of them's going to type. Oh, yes. Ms. Cardenas, Berenice says that you do have Nearpod. Perfect. Maybe you use that board and create a discussion on Nearpod. I was going to say, if you don't have Nearpod, use Padlet, pero también, you'll get only three because it is very pricey, I think. So use 3 Padlets, use it for the week, delete it, and then go break it out. Or go, I would have said Microsoft Flip, but Microsoft Flip is no longer available to create a discussion. It's fine. We can create a discussion in the classroom. Guide students to summarize their observations and take notes using graphic organizers for number 3. Elaborate. Assign a project where students create a poster or digital presentation of a specific organism that interacts with an environment. Include both biotic and abiotic factors. I love elaborate because that's where I'm going to go next. Part of the SAMR model is substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition, right? That's another way. It's a model, it's a framework so that we can integrate technology in the classroom. Number 4 here says elaborate. Assign a project where students create a poster or digital presentation. What if we create a public service announcement where my students research what's going on along the border and how this border wall is interfering with the Rio Grande Valley ecosystem. The Rio Grande Valley has a rich birding community, right? A lot of people come to the valley because of birding. But now we're creating and putting up these structures that are going to disturb an ecosystem. What are the implications of this border wall, which is not really a wall, right? It's just a bunch of stuff there in the ecosystem. Now my students are applying this to a real world problem. Now we turn this into a PBL. So I'm going to type on number 4. I like your example on number 4. I want to create a project PBL for my students to extend the learning and create a PSA. Remember, some of my students struggle, oh my goodness, with the English language. How can I make sure they feel included? There's my question. I like your example number 4. I want to create a PBL for my students to extend the learning and create a PSA. Remember, some of my students struggle with the English language. How can I make sure they feel included? So now I submit, and it's going to give me some information. Look, so here it is. I'm going to project-based learning, PBL, create a list of resources that include videos, podcasts, and articles of various reading levels. This ensures all students can access the information. But look at what's happening. We hadn't seen this before in my previous interactions with Microsoft Copilot. What do we have here? We have a link. that links directly to PBL with English language learners, a vital need. I'm going to click on this link and see what happens. Now I have an article, and Copilot is telling me, hey, I'm not making this up. This is from the Buck Institute. PBL Works, an article that supports PBL with English language learners. And here is an explanation. This is where the information is coming from. And it's giving me a resource so that I can cross check this information, because the AI is not perfect. AI is going to give you some faulty information, some misinformation, but you can cross-check, cross-reference, and say, you know what, this does work for my students. Create a PBL roadmap with students, with visuals. Teach collaboration. Don't neglect explicit language instruction. So don't let that go. Integrate students' backgrounds and experience. This is so powerful. I did a similar project. One of my students worked with his dad. His dad had a landscaping company, right? He mowed lawns and set up plantitas and all of that. Well, since he worked with his dad uh, over the summer, he had knowledge of native plants and how some plants work better when it was too dry, or how much light they needed. So when they were talking about ecosystems and how these native plants might be affected, he brought in that knowledge, you know, even though it's not so much academic or different type of knowledge, the fact that he had that experience working with his dad doing lawns and yards and landscaping, he brought into that to the group. So that was powerful for me. Anyways, I'm gonna come back over here. Each of these, notice how we got more links, and even at the very bottom, it's giving me links that I can access from PBL Works. Colorín Colorado, if you ever access that, they got some good stuff there, pretty decent stuff. Define learning on blog, and then that getting image that we saw on the illustration. So it breaks down the steps for PBL, the research, the planning, creation, presentation, and then the reflection step. So we know we have a lot of language or emergent bilinguals. They do have to take that TELPAS test during TELPAS season in February, but we're providing opportunities for our students to verbalize, to explain, because to describe, like the TEKS mentioned, the standard said here, observe and describe. Well, Copilot's giving me an option that says presentation. So students need to be able to present to someone. If you want to use cameras, uh, iPads, their phone to create this public service announcement, it's phenomenal. It's a great way to be engaging, to provide real world applications. Oh, and remember that real world application, it's going to be very common in the tech apps TEKS coming down from TEA, the technology applications, real world applications. Same thing for the science. Um, and everything is explained right here using Copilot. Pero está muy largo esto. What am I going to do? Well, Copilot does give you the option to copy. I just copied that. And then I can go to my Google Drive. It's going to ask me to sign in, but oh no, there you go. I'm signed in. I'm just going to get a new document. And paste with the links into this Google Doc. Project-based learning. Yeah, está. I got it. And it even gave me a happy face. How does this plan sound to you? Well, Copilot, this plan sounds awesome. This plan sounds amazing. Can we add a technology component to this? I want my students, oh my goodness, I can't type, to create something digitally. You put had instead of add. Oh my goodness. Okay. See, the good thing is that I think Copilot was created by a seventh grade writing teacher. When I was an ELA teacher in seventh grade, and if you, I'm sure that some of your students misspell words, but you know what they are, and then your colleagues, like the math teacher or the coaches, will ask you, "How do you understand what he's writing?" Well, you just do because you know them. So even though I misspelled a bunch of words, um, can we add a technology component to this? My students create something misspelled. Okay. So it even understands Omar's gonna misspell words. That's fine. I know what he's saying. So then he created it. And there you go. Now it creates additional support for EL students with disabilities. Oh, that one we already do that one. You. Okay, there's a first one. Steps in technology integration, online databases, educational websites and videos, Google Docs, Google Slides, collaborative tools, YouTube, Google Classroom, Classroom website. Students upload their PSAs to a shared platform where they can present their work to the class, encourage peer reviews and discussion using comment features. So now it's broken down for us so that we can create. Again, you probably could have come up with this, but Copilot makes it easier. I was presenting on Copilot yesterday. Actually, no, in Google Gemini, Copilot was blocked. Uh, and I like to say that I use Copilot as a thought buddy or a thinking buddy. A lot of times you sit in the well, no, you don't sit in the teacher's lounge because everybody's making copies and the copies gets jammed. Everybody's in. But maybe you sit in the PLC room or you sit in your department classroom and you're sharing ideas. Hey, Mr. Lopez, I'm gonna be teaching fractions next week. What do you think I can use to make sure that Omar understands what fractions are and how to multiply or how to add fractions, and that you're using that person to interact and share ideas and bounce ideas. Well, now you don't have to pretend that you like the teacher across the classroom. You can use, I am kidding. Probably you do like the teacher across the hall, but maybe you can use Copilot to share those ideas. In fact, I'm going to ask Copilot one question that I always ask. What are some potential challenges or obstacles that my students might face while learning about interaction within an ecosystem, right? I would have asked one of my teachers, hey, or maybe one of my more experienced teachers, if it's something that I'm not haven't taught yet. And we see this in elementary. Some year or 1 year, a teacher's teaching one concept, the following one grade level, the following year, he or she's teaching third grade, and then going back to kinder. So that might be, you ask somebody, hey, what are some challenges or obstacles that my student might face while learning about interactions with an ecosystem? And boom, Copilot is going to tell me here are some challenges and a strategy. I could have asked, use Marzano's strategy so that I could teach my students. But look, some challenges. Complexity of concepts. Challenge, understanding the intricate relationship between biotic and abiotic factors. Strategy, break down the concepts into smaller, manageable parts. Use visual aids like diagrams and flowcharts to illustrate these interactions clearly. Pues sí, that works. Challenge, student who struggles with English may find it difficult to grasp scientific terminology. Strategy, provide bilingual resources and use visual support. Encourage peer collaboration where students can help each other. So it's given me some potential challenges. So now I know, you know what, I'm going to teach this next week. I better get ready and have some visuals. I better get ready and think about my pedagogy and have some group work. I better get ready and have a collection of resources that I can put in Google Classroom so my students can go there when they get stuck and access that so that my learning, is has more flow, is more fluid, and is more seamless as I am teaching this. I'm gonna take a pause here. Let's see here. I think we're good. Okay. No questions. And this one goes Until what time? Any questions that you may have? Because I think I'm at time. I'm gonna pause though. I'm gonna come back to my presentation. And really, this is what we've already covered. Oh, there you go. We were here. This is our Q&A. So this is the moment for Q&A. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer these for you. Ms. Marvin, thank you so much for adding that link. I was already looking for it. I appreciate you. What about mini lessons? Um, so you could, let's go ask. Do we want a mini lesson on ecosystems still, or do you want a mini lesson on something else, Ms. Amelia? Okay, cool. So let's stick with ecosystem, right? Uh, I'm gonna create a new topic. Actually, I'm gonna stay there. I have another request. Of course, what do you need help with next? Yeah. I need to create a 15, you know what, let's do 10-minute mini lesson on this same topic. It is to tutor my students during their lunch. I want to be very clear and um, relevant. Help me create this mini. So look, we have 10 minutes to do this. Introduction. Start with a quick engaging question to capture the interest. Have you ever wondered how plants and animals survive in different environments? Briefly state what they will learn in this mini lesson. Biotic factors, living components of an ecosystem. You got 3 minutes to explain that. And sometimes we do start with a mini lesson, right? That's our direct teach, 7 to 14 minutes at the most. Get the instruction out, and boom, let's go into guided practice. Let's go into independent practice. All right, let's come together. So it's part of that. So that's uh, your teaching. We got our explanation, visual aids, use a visual aid like a diagram to, so you'll see how it's taking the same ideas, but now it's making it more concise, more like into one, more, I guess, shorter. And then recap. Today we learned that ecosystems are made up of biotic, which are living, and abiotic, non-living factors, and these factors interact in various ways to support life. Any questions? And that is how you would do that middle lesson. So it kind of summarizes it for you. Is it super complex? Maybe not. But as we mentioned, or as I mentioned earlier, it's a way to interact with a think buddy that's digital, that's not going to judge you because you're asking the same questions over and over. You might ask, hey, how do I teach similes and metaphors? And then the next week, how do I teach similes and metaphor? How do I teach similes and metaphor? If you go to the same teacher in your campus to ask the same question, maybe that teacher is not going to bring you tacos anymore. It's going to make a face. But Copilot will never do that to you. So yes, I did a 6-week unit, and it broke it down into like week 1, cover this, week 2, cover this, week 3, cover that. Now, I don't know how much or how you would want to approach that, because you do have a pacing guide like the district curriculum or scope and sequence pacing guide. Pero you can always say, I have to teach all of this in 6 weeks. What should I teach first so that I can build a foundation to teach that? So yes, that's a good question. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that you what you would do there without entering any student personal information, you can just be very clear and say, I have students that have dyslexia. I have students that have difficulty in whatever that child is, right? But just say my student has this disability. If you could tell me like one disability, like all I can think of is dyslexia or not necessarily ED or but you if you're specific in that autism, okay. So take the minute lesson on purpose pursuit. It's important to incorporate strategies that cater to their unique learning needs. Use a visual prompt like a picture of a pond ecosystem to capture their interest. Can you spot the living and non-living things? So you'll see that it's very similar, but then you got the interaction explanation. Use a visual story or sequence of images to show how fish depend on algae for food and how sunlight affects algae. So it might give you ideas of something that you already do, of an approach that you already use, and you might help you tweak it in another way that fits your students' needs. Look, additional strategies for students with autism incorporate plenty of visuals. And now look at this is a little different. It provides an actual study and with an abstract practical teaching strategies for students with autism and the spectrum disorder, a review of literature. So now you get into the research of it. Same thing here. Same thing here. Use sensory tools, provide structure and routine. So yes, yes, yes. That is my time. I think we went a little over. I appreciate you all being here. As I mentioned in my previous session, I appreciate what PSJA does for all the teachers and putting this together. I will be at the Best Practices Conference for Secondary in a couple of weeks. I'm grateful for PSJA's partnership and the support that we get from the administration and Dr. Elias as well. So I am here. If you want my email, I'm going to add it to the chat. Please send me an email if you have any questions. I wish you the best for the remainder of the school year as it begins. And I hope you have a wonderful day and an even better weekend. Thank you so much.